You know that feeling when you finally think you've made it? When you're standing at the edge of your dream, and then someone shows up just to ruin it? Yeah, that was me. After years of working 70-hour weeks, I'd finally bought my piece of heaven, a cozy house on Lake Haven. Calm water, fishing at sunrise, quiet nights with the sound of frogs and crickets. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Well, mine until the HOA showed up. At first, I didn't even know the community had a homeowners association. The previous owner never mentioned it, and I figured it was just one of those small-town lakes where people minded their own business. I was wrong. 3 days after I moved in, a knock on my door shattered the peace. When I opened it, I was greeted by a woman who looked like she'd walked straight out of a Stepford brochure, crisp white blouse, oversized sunglasses, and that tight smile that told you she wasn't here to welcome you. "Hi," she chirped. "I'm Karen, president of the Lake Haven Homeowners Association." Of course she was. She handed me a thick binder labeled HOA Rules and Regulations, then gave me a once-over like I was an uninvited guest. "We like to keep things orderly here," she said. "I assume you'll be following all community guidelines?" I forced a smile. "Sure thing. I just moved in and still getting settled." Karen's eyes flicked toward the lake. "I noticed you have a dock. That wasn't in the listing photos." "Yeah," I said. "Built it myself last weekend. Always wanted a place to fish off." Her smile vanished. "I'm afraid that's not allowed. Docks require HOA approval." I blinked. "Approval? It's my property." "Technically," she said, adjusting her sunglasses, "the lakefront falls under shared community oversight. You'll need to remove it immediately." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. That night I sat on my dock, staring at the reflection of the moon on the water. The wood creaked softly beneath me. Brand new cedar I'd spent 2 days sanding, sealing and bolting into place. Remove it? No chance. But the next morning I got an official letter taped to my mailbox. HOA violation. Unauthorized construction on shared property. Fine, $500. $500 for a dock that didn't bother a soul. I called the number listed and, surprise, Karen answered. "Karen, it's Mason from Lot 23, I said. "There's got to be some mistake." "No mistake," she said in that syrupy voice. "You were given the rules. The dock has to go. Karen, nobody even uses this side of the lake. It's my land. Look at the survey." "Not my problem," she said flatly. "Rules are rules." Click. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who likes conflict, but I am the kind who doesn't back down when he's right. So I went digging. I spent hours looking up property maps, old deeds, even county records, and what I found made my blood boil. Turns out my property extended 6 feet into the water line. The dock wasn't just legal. It was 100% on my land. So I printed the documents and marched straight to the next HOA meeting. The meeting was held at the clubhouse. All modern gray walls, fake plants and folding chairs in neat rows. About 20 people were there, sipping coffee and gossiping. Karen sat up front, gavel in hand like some kind of suburban judge. When it came time for community concerns, I raised my hand. "Yes, Mason?" she said, already annoyed. "I'd like to address the fine for my dock," I said. "I brought documents proving it's on my property." "County records show the boundary line." She cut me off. "We've already voted on it." "Voted without me?" "That's how it works, Mason," she said. "You can appeal next quarter." Next quarter. 3 months. I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, some sympathetic, most silent. Karen just smirked. That was the night I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about control. The following week I ignored the fine. Then came another letter. This time, the HOA threatened to put a lien on my property. That's when I knew Karen wasn't bluffing. So I did what any stubborn, slightly petty man would do. I doubled down. I repainted the dock, added new railings, even strung up some solar lights. If she was going to fight me, she was going to have to fight in style. Within days, she was back at my door. "Mason, we warned you," she snapped. "You're in violation of HOA policy." I folded my arms. "Policy doesn't override property law." "You're disturbing the uniform appearance of the lakefront." "Uniform?" I said, pointing across the water. "Half those docks are falling apart." She pursed her lips. "Those were grandfathered in." "Convenient," I muttered. She leaned in, voice cold. Remove it or we'll take legal action." Then she walked away, heels clicking on my driveway like she owned the place. That night, as I sat on my dock again, a thought crept in. Why was she so obsessed with this? It wasn't about a dock. There was something deeper, something personal. So I started talking to neighbors, quietly. Most of them didn't like the HOA either, but they were scared to say anything. Karen had fined people for unauthorized mailbox colors, for leaving trash cans out an hour too long, even for having wind chimes too loud. She ruled that neighborhood like a queen with a clipboard. One older man, Carl, told me, "You're not the first one she's gone after, but you might be the first to stand up to her." That stuck with me. A week later, I came home from work and found my dock gone, completely dismantled. All that was left were broken boards floating near the shore. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Then I saw tire tracks leading down from the road to the waterline. A truck had been here. Rage doesn't even begin to cover it. I grabbed my phone and called Karen. "Karen, what the hell did you do?" She sighed like I was a child bothering her. "We had I removed for non-compliance. You trespassed on private property," I shouted. "That's destruction of property." "Calm down," she said smugly. "You can file a complaint if you'd like, but you'll find the HOA board already approved it." "You're going to regret this," I said quietly, and for the first time she hesitated. Then she hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the empty edge of my yard, staring at the water where my dock used to be. The moonlight shimmered over the lake like it was mocking me. That's when the idea hit. If she wanted to play dirty, fine. I'd play smarter. Karen thought she owned this lake. But what if she actually didn't? So I opened my laptop and started digging again. Land records, ownership maps, tax parcels, public records, anything tied to Lake Haven. And that's when I found it. Something Karen clearly didn't know. The lake itself wasn't owned by the HOA. It was owned by a private developer who'd gone bankrupt 5 years earlier. And the entire lakefront, every inch of shoreline, was up for auction. You ever have one of those moments where you realize life just handed you the perfect chance for revenge? Yeah, that was mine. I sat in the glow of my laptop, staring at the auction notice like it was some kind of divine sign. Lake Haven Development Property, Parcel A through E Foreclosure Auction. All bids due by end of month. My heart started pounding. The entire lakefront, every dock, every slip, every square inch Karen thought she ruled over. It was all up for grabs, and best of all, the HOA didn't even own it. I scrolled through the listing again just to make sure I wasn't dreaming. The parcels covered everything around the waterline. Technically, a community access land. The HOA had been bluffing for years, enforcing rules on property they didn't even control. I could barely breathe. For the first time since moving to Lake Haven, I actually smiled. The next morning, I drove straight to the county office. I wanted answers, not assumptions. The clerk, an older woman named Patty, recognized the name immediately. "Oh, that old mess," she said, flipping through some dusty files. "That developer went belly up a while back. The lake property's been sitting in limbo ever since." "Is the HOA listed anywhere as owner?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nope. They pay usage fees for maintenance, but they don't own a thing." I grinned. "So anyone could buy it?" "As long as they meet the auction requirements," she said. "Cash or certified funds only. It's not cheap, though." "How not cheap?" She tapped a few keys. "Starting bid's $85,000. 85 grand. My stomach dropped. That was most of my savings, everything I'd worked for. But the thought of Karen's smug face when she realized she didn't control me anymore, that was priceless. For the next 2 weeks, I worked overtime at my construction job, picking up every side gig I could find. I sold my boat, listed my old truck, even dipped into my emergency fund. Meanwhile, I kept my mouth shut. Karen still strutted around the neighborhood like a peacock, completely unaware that the ground beneath her kingdom was about to shift. She'd send me final warnings and penalty notices, but I didn't even bother responding. Let her think she was winning. The day before the auction, I drove to the county building with a cashier's check for $90,000. Everything I had. There were 5 bidders total. 3 were real estate investors. 1 was a developer from 2 counties over. And then there was me, the guy in a flannel shirt and steel-toe boots, clutching a folder like it was his last lifeline. The auctioneer called everyone to order. Parcel A through E, collectively known as Lake Haven Waterfront, he said. Opening bid, $85,000. The first investor raised his hand. 85. I waited. 90,000, I said, my voice steady, even though my heart felt like it was trying to break out of my chest. The room went quiet. The auctioneer looked up, eyebrow raised. Bid of 90,000 from Mason, correct? I nodded. The other bidders exchanged glances. One of them whispered something to another and shook his head. The next bid stalled at 92,000, but I didn't back down. 95, I said immediately. The investors frowned. They weren't here for a small-town lake. They wanted profit, not drama. Within minutes, it was down to just me and one last bidder. A man in a tan suit who kept scrolling on his phone, probably representing some investment group. 97, he said. 100,000, I said. The room froze. Even the auctioneer blinked. 100,000 going once, going twice. He slammed the gavel. Sold. To Mason Walker. I let out a shaky laugh. My hands were trembling, but it was done. I'd just bought the entire Lake Haven waterfront. The look on the tan suit's face, worth every penny. Driving home that day, I kept glancing at the deed papers on my passenger seat. I owned the lake, not just a house on it, the actual shoreline, every dock, every access point. When I pulled into my driveway, I stood there for a long minute staring at the water. Karen's kingdom was officially mine, and for once I didn't feel angry. I felt powerful. 2 days later, I went to the HOA meeting. I didn't announce myself beforehand. I just walked in, same as always, except this time I wasn't there to defend myself. I was there to drop a bomb. Karen was already mid-speech, droning on about aesthetic consistency and violations of dock maintenance standards. When she finally noticed me sitting quietly in the back row, her lips tightened. Mr. Walker, I believe you're here to address your ongoing non-compliance? I stood up. Actually, I'm here to address something else. I walked to the front and handed her a copy of my deed. You might want to read that before you find me again. She frowned, flipping through the pages, and then her face went pale. This can't be right, she whispered. Oh, it's right, I said. As of last week, I'm the legal owner of the Lake Haven waterfront, every inch of it, which means you've been issuing fines and tearing down property on land that was never yours to control. The room erupted in whispers. People turned to each other, stunned. Karen slammed her gavel. That's impossible. The HOA has been bluffing, I interrupted. For years. I checked the county records. You never owned it. You just acted like you did. A man from the board, Ted, I think his name was, spoke up. Is that true, Karen? She didn't answer. Her face was crimson, eyes darting across the papers like she was searching for a loophole. Mason, you can't just... I already did, I said. Which means starting today, all dock usage, maintenance, and access fees go through me. You want to fish? You want to kayak? You want to walk your dog by the shore? That's fine, but it's my property now. The silence was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, someone clapped. Then another. And another. Pretty soon, half the room was cheering. Karen stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots on the tile floor. I didn't chase her. I just watched her go. That same tight smile she used to weaponize now completely gone. After the meeting, a few neighbors came up to me, shaking my hand, patting my back. Man, you did what we all wanted to do for years, Carl said. You actually stood up to her. I shrugged, still trying to process everything. Guess I was just stubborn enough to do it. Over the next few weeks, things changed fast. Karen tried to contest the purchase, but the law was the law. The HOA had no legal claim to the lakefront, and the county confirmed it. She even filed a complaint, claiming I'd unfairly leveraged insider information, but that went nowhere. I'd followed every rule, the same ones she'd used against everyone else. And when the final ruling came in confirming my ownership, she finally resigned from the HOA for personal reasons. No one was surprised. I didn't become some tyrant landlord, though. I wasn't there to make enemies. Instead, I hosted a community meeting of my own, same clubhouse, but a completely different tone. Look, I told everyone, I don't want to fight with you guys. I just want us to enjoy the lake again. No more petty fines. No more power trips. Let's make this place somewhere we actually like living. People smiled. Some even looked relieved. I announced that all previous HOA dock restrictions were void. Homeowners could rebuild, repaint, or expand their docks however they wanted, as long as it was safe. The mood that day felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time, Lake Haven wasn't ruled by fear. Of course, word got back to Karen. One evening, a few weeks later, I found her waiting by my driveway. She looked different. The sharp confidence was gone. She looked Mason, she said quietly. Can we talk? I hesitated, then nodded. Sure. She took a deep breath. I just wanted to say, I didn't mean for things to get so ugly. You destroyed my dock, Karen. I know, she said softly. I was trying to keep things under control. When my husband left, the HOA was the only thing I had left. It made me feel like I still had purpose. For the first time, she didn't sound like a villain. Just a broken person who needed to control something, because her own life was falling apart. I sighed. You went too far. She nodded. I know. I'm sorry. I looked at the lake, now calm and golden in the setting sun. For what it's worth, I said, I don't hate you. But you can't run people's lives just because yours hurts. She didn't say anything, just looked at the water for a long moment before walking away. A few months later, life at Lake Haven was better than ever. Families fished together on weekends. Kids swam in the water again. The place felt alive, not patrolled. I even rebuilt my dock, twice as sturdy and twice as long. And when I sat there at night, feet dangling above the ripples, I finally felt peace. But I didn't forget what happened, because that whole experience taught me something powerful. Sometimes the people who try hardest to control others are the ones who've lost control of themselves. And sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting fire with fire, it's taking back what's yours and turning it into something better. One Saturday afternoon, I hosted a neighborhood barbecue down by the water. Everyone came, even Karen. She kept to herself mostly, but she smiled a few times, and that was enough. Carl raised a beer to me and said, You know, Mason, you didn't just buy the lake. You gave us back our home. I laughed. Nah, you guys already had it. You just needed someone to remind you. As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the lake orange and pink, I realized something else. This wasn't just my revenge story anymore. It was a story about community, about standing up to bullies, and about fighting for what's right, even when you're outnumbered. Later that night, I took out my phone and started recording a short video, the same way people make those storytime posts online. I looked into the camera and said, if someone's trying to take something from you that you worked hard for, don't just roll over. Stand your ground. Know your rights. Because sometimes the best way to beat the system is to own it. I smiled, turned the camera toward the water and added, Oh, and if a Karen ever tells you to remove your dock, make sure she knows who really owns the lake. The video blew up overnight. Millions of views, hundreds of comments cheering for the underdog who fought back and won. But for me, it wasn't about the fame. It was about peace, about finally feeling like I was where I belonged. At Lake Haven, under a sky full of stars, with the sound of water lapping against my dock. Don't let anyone bully you out of your dream. Sometimes the best comeback isn't revenge, it's success.